I think the most challenging part is dealing with the emotions of people around me, particularly. I think as a hospice person, we have to step back from being personally involved emotionally, but certainly seeing people's end of life emotions, either for themselves or family members, is a challenge, and learning to accept that it's a part of life, it's a part of death, and it is something that we have to do. People. As I said, I come back to being a patient volunteer. There's an intimacy of a hospice relationship. Wearing a hospice name badge opens the door to be involved in people's lives, hearing their stories, which are fascinating, and people from the individuals who are a step away from being homeless to the most wealthy, educated, sophisticated people all have a story. And listening is a wonderful part of hospice, asking questions about people's lives, and asking family members of the hospice patient as well is simply a very, very positive, rewarding thing. Well, the one that really is most personal is that I've been a patient volunteer for many years. My wife, my first wife, was a patient volunteer as well. We sat in this room and participated in hospice volunteer activities. 6 years ago, she was diagnosed with brain cancer, and in 2 months, she was dead. For those 2 months, she was in the care of Yolo Hospice. And at that point, I obviously had many years of Yolo Hospice experience as in a number of roles. I mean, I was in charge of buying this building, and I did a lot of board work and all sorts of other things. But being on the other side, having received the benefits of this organization, I was blown away. It was so complete. It was so whatever we can do for you kind of attitude, whatever is necessary for your comfort, whatever is necessary for pain management, whatever is necessary for bathing and spiritual care and social workers and the patient volunteers. I mean, we used all the services, and I used the bereavement services afterwards in this same room. And before that time, I thought I knew Yolo Hospice. That gave me another perspective of what Yolo Hospice is all about. That's the most personal, real experience I've ever had. I've seen patients all over our service area. I've seen patients of all varieties with all sorts of conditions, but those stand out. The other thing that I've experienced in Yolo Hospice is often a patient will have something that they are uncomfortable with, a relative specifically that they don't talk to, a sibling. And I really find it rewarding to say to them, well, why don't you talk to your brother or sister? I don't know, but we haven't talked in 20 years and we're not going to start now. I said, well, you know, you're at your end of life. If I can communicate with that person, sometimes it's with the family. And I try to encourage some healing with issues, with people that will be left unhealed if the person dies and doesn't reach out. Or sometimes I'll go to the other party and say, or we'll have a relative say, ask this person if they want to talk to this patient that doesn't want to talk to them, because it's now or never. And when that happens in a positive way, it's extraordinarily rewarding. Meaning, I've seen reconciliation of people that hadn't talked for a very long time, and often one of the first things they say is, I wish we had done this before. And that's very rewarding to assist in healing. And as an outside person, I can ask questions or raise issues that a family member won't do, won't go there. As a hospice volunteer, we learn life skills. One of the biggest skills is we learn to listen. We learn to hear people's stories. We learn to ask questions and probing questions or questions that open up things. We learn to be quiet. One of the skills I learned when we did the patient volunteer patient training was you don't have to talk all the time. Our society, our world encourages us to always have things moving. Well, just sitting with somebody, holding their hand or touching their arm or looking into their eyes, or sometimes patients are not communicating, and so just being in the room with them. There's comfort in that for the patient, I think, and there's certainly comfort for the volunteer. And also, there are more areas of learning. I mean, we all will die. How do we want to die? We learn about what's available. We learn about what is important. We learn about what we need to do today and not tomorrow. We hear all the time, I wish I had done whatever. And it tells me, well, my whatever needs to be done now. And saying things. I learned people when they're at the end of life and can't communicate, my sense is they have uncommunicated things to their friends and family. Learning to say those things, learning to say to someone that's close, I love you and I want to be remembered for these things, or expressing things to kids. All these things that at my age I see people around me dying, and I hear stories about what they didn't do and what they didn't say. I know what their values are. Express those things. Those are incredibly big life skills that hospice has taught me to bring into my own life. Well, I've been on a number of hospice committees and functions. I have lived in Yolo County for almost 50 years. From the beginning of my residency here, I have been involved in nonprofits in a variety of ways. I've always been involved in some nonprofits, often multiple ones. I have never had the joy and satisfaction that I've had with Yolo Hospice in any other organization. There's a quality of people that work for this organization, and probably other hospices as well, that is the loving, caring kind of care that we want. Being a part of that is a privilege. And people often say to any hospice person, how can you deal with this topic? Well, we're all going to die, and we're all going to have some end-of-life process. And the question is, how do we want to do it? And I just think that Yolo Hospice is a superior organization with superior administration and wonderful frontline people that deal with incredibly complicated topics every day of the week. And to be a small part of that is a privilege. And that's just something that I'm not involved in any other nonprofits anymore for as long as I can do anything on a volunteer basis except Yolo Hospice. And I think that this is where I want to put my effort. One of the other things I did after my first wife died, the library down the hall is the Barbara Frankel Memorial Library. That's in her honor. And we, the family and friends, raised money to create that room. And it's a beautiful experience just to go in there and sit. And I do it on a frequent basis. And there's so many things that can be done for this organization to make it a more complete structure, more complete services. For example, the palliative care program. I'm involved in some small way in that on a board level. So I support what this organization does, but I always come back to the patient volunteer because that's people-to-people work. We need the overall structure, but we also need those frontline people. And the volunteers are beautifully trained and guided with a volunteer coordinator giving us direction. And it's just a very, very rewarding experience.